I received the invitation on a Thursday, a week before the wedding. Ivory cardstock, gold embossing, delicate cursive. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Rebecca Langley and Thomas Clarke. The words felt like cold water. I read them 3 times, then set the card on the counter and didn't touch it again for hours. Thomas, my Thomas, the man who once swore, in front of God and a small circle of family, that we would spend our lives together. The man who had been my home, my storm, and my anchor all at once. Now he was moving across the aisle, from my arms to my sister's. I thought I'd felt betrayal before, back when he left without explanation, when he abandoned me in the months of quiet heartbreak. But this was the crystallization of everything I had feared. Rebecca, my younger sister, sweet, obedient, golden-haired Rebecca, who had always watched me with those half-smiles of envy and admiration. She had never hidden her ambition. Perhaps that was why she had waited until I had fallen completely silent before stepping in. I stared at the invitation again. My mother's voice echoed in my head, always steady, always cautious. You cannot control the world, only your own actions. So I made a decision. I would attend the wedding. I would bring a gift. Not one wrapped in ribbon or lace, not one purchased from a store. No, my gift would be far more personal and far more devastating. The week before the wedding passed like a slow tide. Every morning I rehearsed my smile, my greetings, the polite small talk that everyone would expect. I prepared my clothes, pale gray with faint silver embroidery, a compromise between mourning and elegance. I didn't want to be invisible. I wanted to be remembered, but the true preparation wasn't outward. It was internal. I cataloged memories, conversations, moments Thomas had shared with me. Nothing illegal, nothing malicious, just facts. Facts that, when arranged properly, would illuminate the truth about choices, loyalty, and the fragility of appearances. By Friday, my notebook was full. Margins filled with observations. Thomas's subtle hesitation before answering my questions about Rebecca. The letters I had written but never sent, detailing fears, hopes, and warnings. Small inconsistencies in my sister's retellings of past events. Everything had its place, and everything was timed. The day of the wedding arrived. The church was modest, whitewashed, with sun streaming through tall stained glass windows. Guests murmured, smiled, and whispered as I entered. I paused at the doorway. Rebecca's smile stretched wide, flawless, as she caught sight of me. "You came," she said softly. Her eyes darted quickly to Thomas, who looked tense, unaware of my arrival. "Yes," I replied. My voice was quiet but steady. I slid into a pew midway back, not too close, not too far. My notebook lay in my bag beside me. Every word inside would remain unspoken until the perfect moment, until the vows were exchanged and the entire room was suspended. In that fragile trust that weddings demand, the ceremony began. Thomas's voice trembled as he spoke the first promises. My stomach twisted. I listened, counting each hesitation, each word that carried double meaning, each glance he stole toward me. Rebecca's hand shook slightly as she held his. She did not see my notebook, nor did anyone else. But I saw her. I saw the truth beneath the practiced smiles, the rehearsed words. The pastor asked if anyone objected. No one did. Silence, polite and expectant, settled over the congregation. I imagined opening my notebook then, revealing the truth of every hidden tension, every suppressed conversation, every choice that had led to this union. I imagined the ripple, the subtle collapse of the polished veneer, and I smiled faintly. After the ceremony, as guests filed out to the reception hall, I followed at a measured pace. The hall was decorated in cream and gold, the long tables lined with candles and soft floral arrangements. Music hummed lightly in the background, but my focus remained sharp. Thomas greeted me with a brief, awkward nod. "You look well," he said. "Thank you," I said. "You too." Rebecca approached, radiant and expectant. She handed me a glass of champagne, her smile unwavering. "I'm glad you're here. It means a lot to me." I raised the glass politely. But inside, I felt a different kind of warmth. This wasn't about celebration. It was about truth. And every toast, every smile, every clink of glasses was a countdown to my gift. At that moment, I realized that love and loyalty were not always about presence or absence. They were about memory, acknowledgement, and the courage to reveal what has been hidden, and I was ready. The reception hall glittered with golden light, the chatter of guests blending with the soft music. Laughter filled the room, a polished harmony that could never mask the cracks beneath. I walked slowly along the perimeter, notebook hidden in my clutch, eyes scanning. Every family member, every friend, every smile, I cataloged them all. Timing was everything. Too early, and it would seem petty. Too late. The reception hall glittered with golden light, the chatter of guests blending with soft music. Laughter filled the room, a polished harmony that could never mask the cracks beneath. I walked slowly along the perimeter, notebook hidden in my clutch, eyes scanning. Every family member, every friend, every smile, I cataloged them all. Timing was everything. Too early, and it would seem petty. Too late, and the moment would lose its weight. Thomas was hovering near the bar, attempting a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Rebecca floated beside him, radiant in her bridal gown, yet her hand trembled faintly as she sipped champagne. That tremor was all I needed, a crack, however small, to slip through. The music shifted, a soft waltz playing, signaling the start of the first dance. Couples rose, moving carefully to the rhythm, and for a moment, the hall seemed suspended in perfection. I stayed seated, my notebook resting against my thigh, waiting for the right moment. When the bride and groom took the floor, I leaned forward slightly. My notebook opened naturally to the page I had prepared for months, a compilation of letters, forgotten confessions, and subtle truths that no one outside our private circles had ever known. I waited for the photographer to focus, for the crowd to quiet down for the next announcement, then stood. I raised my glass, catching the attention of every eye in the room. Murmurs rippled through the guests. "May I have your attention?" My voice was calm, steady, commanding enough to cut through the background chatter. Thomas's eyebrows shot up. Rebecca blinked, uncertain. Guests turned politely, curious, slightly wary. "I brought a gift for the bride and groom," I continued. "It's not something you can hold or unwrap. It's a collection of truths, memories, and moments that were always part of their story, whether acknowledged or not." A ripple of tension passed through the room. A few guests exchanged confused glances. I opened my notebook, holding it high so it caught the candlelight. This contains letters, conversations, and details of love and loyalty, some of which have been overlooked, forgotten, or misrepresented. It tells the story of choices that shape the people we are, and the relationships we've inherited. Thomas's face went pale. I could see the tremor in his hands as he adjusted his cufflinks. Rebecca's smile faltered. She turned slightly, as if to shield herself from something she knew was coming. I let a few moments pass, letting the tension thicken. Every guest leaned in subconsciously, drawn to the invisible weight of what was about to unfold. Then I began to read. Not loudly, but clearly enough for those nearest to hear. "Thomas, you once promised forever to someone else, that someone else trusted, believed, and waited for that promise to be honored. Rebecca, you stepped into a story that wasn't fully yours to claim. And yet here we are." Gasps fluttered through the crowd. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even childhood friends murmured, unsure whether to look away or listen closer. I continued, choosing moments of deliberate pause to let each phrase land. Love is not measured by ceremonies or dresses. Loyalty is not defined by who stands at the altar. True understanding comes from knowing the choices we make and the consequences that follow. By now, the room was still. The soft music felt intrusive, fading into the background of collective realization. Rebecca's hand trembled on the glass of champagne, which she had forgotten to sip. Thomas's jaw tightened. Neither met my eyes, but I could feel their awareness, their private guilt, their reckoning. I closed the notebook gently. "This is my gift," I said softly, letting the words hang in the air. A reminder that love is complex, Loyalty is tested and truth, eventually, cannot be hidden. The silence stretched. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others stared, trying to process the weight of a revelation they weren't expecting. Only a few understood what had truly been said, the selective truths that rewrote the narrative they thought they knew. Thomas stepped forward, attempting to regain control. His voice faltered, almost breaking. He glanced at Rebecca, then at me. Don't speak, I interrupted, softly but firmly. Not yet. Let this moment settle. Let everyone remember that words and promises, even unspoken ones, have consequences. Rebecca's lips parted, but she said nothing. Her hands clutched her bouquet, petals trembling as if mirroring her pulse. I set the notebook down on a small table nearby, leaving it open. The notes, letters, and carefully documented conversations were visible enough to pique curiosity, but personal enough that only those involved would understand fully. Some of the guests leaned in discreetly, whispers spreading like wildfire. What is that? Whose handwriting is that? Did she just say? I smiled faintly. The perfect gift. Truth, subtle yet undeniable, reshaping the perception of love and loyalty in the family without uttering another word. The remainder of the reception continued in a surreal haze. Laughter felt fragile, smiles stiff, and yet the air held a new weight, a tension of awareness that only the unspoken could create. By the end of the evening, as guests began to leave, I noticed the small, quiet shift in dynamics. Conversations carried more caution, glances were more meaningful, and the golden illusion of perfection had fractured. I had come to the wedding not as a spectator, not as a guest, but as the keeper of truths. My gift had landed perfectly timed, and the ripples of revelation would echo far beyond the reception hall. When I left, Thomas and Rebecca did not follow me. They remained near the dance floor, whispers passing between them, their expressions taut with realization and unspoken reckoning. Outside, the night air was cool. I walked to my car slowly, savoring the aftermath, the quiet power of truth delivered without violence. Without anger, only timing and intention, and I knew, deep in my chest, that some gifts, though intangible, were far more lasting than any material thing could ever be. The morning after the wedding, the world felt different. Not because it had changed, but because the people in it had. Family members who had smiled politely, exchanged pleasantries, and danced under the golden lights now carried whispers behind closed doors. Some glanced at me differently, with curiosity, caution, or newfound respect. Others avoided my gaze entirely, as if they feared the weight of my attention. At breakfast, I saw my father, whose eyes flicked nervously over the table. My gift had reached further than I anticipated. Even he, the man who usually ignored the subtleties of family politics, seemed unsettled. "Quite the speech last night," he said, voice measured, wary. "I wasn't expecting it." I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the silence stretch. Some truths have a way of arriving whether we expect them or not. He frowned, uncertain whether to challenge me or retreat. He chose the latter. The subtle power of revelation worked in layers. Cousins who had sided with Rebecca whispered privately about her ambition. Aunts and uncles discussed Thomas's hesitation and visible discomfort. Even friends who attended the wedding began piecing together fragmented stories they had previously ignored. The family had been realigned, not through confrontation, but through perception. My notebook, the tangible record of invisible truths, had become the catalyst. Later that week, I met with a few relatives under the guise of casual coffee. Their expressions betrayed curiosity and caution. You really told the truth last night," said Aunt Lillian softly, her voice hushed. "I mean, it was necessary," I nodded. "Some stories need to be remembered accurately. It's not about blame, it's about acknowledgement." She leaned closer. "You have power, you know. Quiet, deliberate power. People will listen." "Yes," I admitted, "but only if the timing is right. Only if it serves the truth." Meanwhile, Rebecca and Thomas remained confined in their shared post-wedding bubble. Their smiles, though present, no longer carried the effortless charm they had projected. The room in their home felt smaller, the walls echoing the invisible weight of the revelation. I knew from my observations, and the careful notes I had kept, that cracks were forming. Tiny, imperceptible to outsiders, but undeniable to anyone paying attention. I wasn't cruel. I didn't need to be. The gift had already done its work. I watched quietly as alliances shifted. Friends and family subtly reassessed their loyalties. Conversations changed tone. Even Thomas began questioning decisions he had once taken for granted. It was remarkable how subtly influence could reshape dynamics without a single raised voice. By the weekend, Rebecca approached me in private. Her expression was unreadable, a careful mask over the uncertainty I had stirred. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded. "Of course." She hesitated, then whispered, You didn't have to do that. You could have ignored it, let things be." "I could have," I said, "but I didn't. Some truths are gifts precisely because they are unavoidable. They force clarity, and clarity changes everything." She bit her lip, trying to form words, but none came. I left it there. Silence was a lesson more potent than explanation. Over the following weeks, the family slowly adjusted. Some quietly aligned with my perspective, grateful for honesty. Others withdrew, nursing bruised egos or reconsidering their loyalties. Through it all, I remained a quiet observer, present, composed, and fully aware of the subtle shifts my revelation had caused. The wedding had ended. The celebrations were over, but the consequences of the gift, careful, deliberate, invisible, would ripple for months, perhaps years. And I realized that power did not always come from confrontation. It could be gentle, meticulous, and invisible, shaping perception and choice without overt force. By the end of the month, I had returned to my routine, the notebook safely tucked away. But I carried with me the satisfaction of seeing justice unfold in quiet ways, through understanding, acknowledgement, and the subtle realignment of loyalty and love within my family. Some gifts, I understood fully now, were not wrapped in paper or ribbon. They were moments of truth, delivered carefully, timed perfectly, and remembered forever. Weeks passed. The echoes of the wedding lingered in subtle ways. Family gatherings were quieter, more deliberate. Conversations carried weight, measured pauses, and glances that held unspoken understanding. I attended one such Sunday brunch at my parents' house. The table was crowded, but there was no tension in my own presence, only quiet attention. Eyes flicked to me occasionally, curiosity tempered with respect. Some smiled softly, acknowledging the invisible role I had played in shifting the family's dynamic. Others avoided my gaze, carrying the awareness that things could no longer remain unexamined. Thomas was there, seated near Rebecca. His posture had changed since the wedding, not slumped, but more cautious, more aware of how his choices were scrutinized. Rebecca's hand occasionally brushed his, but the effortless confidence she had once held seemed muted. Their union remained intact, but the invisible cracks persisted. I observed quietly, noting how small gestures, the hesitation before answering, a question, the careful selection of words, revealed the depth of the impact. It wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was subtle, lasting, and far more powerful. Later, I found myself alone with Rebecca in the garden. She looked hesitant, her usual poise tempered by vulnerability. "You know," she said softly, I understand now why you did what you did. I can't say I like it, but I understand." I nodded, letting her words sink. It wasn't about liking or disliking. It was about truth. Love and loyalty aren't measured by appearances. They're proven by acknowledgement, honesty, and choice. She exhaled slowly, the weight of realization settling on her shoulders. I see that now. The gift had accomplished its purpose. Not through anger or malice, but through careful observation, timing, and honesty. I had reshaped perception, brought clarity, and allowed the family to confront hidden truths without destruction. I reflected on the irony. The most powerful gifts were not tangible. They didn't come wrapped in boxes, adorned with ribbons, or presented on pedestals. They were moments of awareness, revelations that altered relationships forever, quietly and invisibly. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the garden, I realized the peace that came with understanding. The wedding had ended, but its lessons remained. Loyalty could be measured, love could be tested, and truth, delivered carefully, had the power to heal or awaken, even without confrontation. I smiled faintly, a quiet satisfaction in my chest. I had given a gift that could not be returned, stolen, or forgotten. It was mine to give, and theirs to carry. And in that subtle, enduring way, the story of love, loyalty, and revelation found its resolution.